Hey everybody, welcome to the Conscious Love Show. Whether you are single, you are in a relationship, or you're healing a broken heart, this show is here to inspire you, to remind you how beautiful, lovable, and amazing you truly are, and to give you the practical tools and insights to navigate from wherever you are right now to the loving relationship that you so deeply want to have. My name is Shane Kohler. I'm a certified transformational coach and trainer with over a decade experience helping people release their trauma and open their hearts to love. I've delivered seminars all over the world, coached thousands of people through my online platforms and programs, and every week I'm coming straight to you with the hottest insights and the best teachers around, bringing you powerful resources and profound conversations to heal your relationship with love, dating, and yourself. I'm so grateful you're here, and if it's your first time, welcome. You can count on me to always show up for you with my very best and a commitment to learn and grow myself so I can serve you to my maximum ability. Thanks so much for tuning into the show. I've got some awesome things planned for you today. So without further ado, let's dive in. Hello again, and welcome back to the Conscious Love Show podcast. Shane Kohler on, pleasure as always. Looking forward to diving back in with you. Today we're speaking about a woman's deepest wound, and that is the need to be chosen. And something I want to say as we begin today's conversation is to address that if you feel this, and I know so many of you will, I was recently speaking about this on Instagram and it resonated with so many people because it really is the deepest wound of the feminine. Especially in the way that women are conditioned, in the way the feminine is raised and brought up and handled in the world, it becomes almost a universal wound. And of course, I want to say that there are exceptions to this, and there's always going to be someone who says, well, not all women or not all men, and you're right. And are there men who feel this? Absolutely. But it is somewhat universal among women, and so many of the women I work with express this. It's like they feel this deep need to be chosen. And it's more than just a need like we all have. Like I want to say, we all have a need for belonging. We all have a need to be loved and to be worthy and to find our place in the world and to find our tribe or our pack and to feel like we belong somewhere, right? Like that's fundamental to who we are as human beings. Men, women, everybody has that. But in the way the feminine is conditioned in our world, it distorts that need. So it goes beyond just a basic human need, and it goes to the level of wound. And maybe we should touch on that before we really get into the nuts and bolts of all of this. What differentiates the need from the wound? And I think if I could sum it up as simply as possible, what differentiates the need from the wound is that it becomes a wound when we end up sacrificing our best interest to try to fulfill that need. Right? So, for example, we all have a need for food, right? We all have a need for sleep. But when our need to get food or our need to get sleep is handled in such a way that it's actually self-destructive, that's when we would say there's a kind of a disorder there. Right? Like, for example, when somebody has an eating disorder, now their need for food is distorted and it becomes disordered because the way that they fulfill that need is self-destructive. And so we could say we all have a need for belonging, and wrapped into that need for belonging is the need to be chosen, right? The need to be chosen by someone or by people and have our tribe, have our place where we belong. And so I want to start by saying there's no shame around having that need. In fact, it would be better if more of us could own that we have that need with responsibility and in a healthy way. But when our attempt to fulfill that need starts to become self-destructive, that's when it becomes a wound. And just to contrast, like, why do I say this is a woman's deepest wound, but not necessarily a man's deepest wound? Because men are almost conditioned the opposite way, which creates its own sense of wounding, right? So men are conditioned to not need, to be strong, to be okay by themselves, to be hyper independent, to not need connection, to not need relationship. So men are almost conditioned to the opposite way. And that opposite conditioning has them ignore the need altogether, which leads to its own kind of wounding. And maybe I'll address that in a future episode. But today I want to address the feminine side of it. And that is where the need to be chosen becomes fundamental to my identity, fundamental to the way I see myself. And so we could think about it like this. If someone chooses me, that means I'm good enough. And if someone doesn't choose me, that means I'm not. And there's a lot I want to unpack around this today because it's so nuanced, and I want to really do my best to highlight some of the specific dynamics and some of the specific ways that this shows up. But let's just start with that fundamental foundational idea. If I'm chosen by someone, and we could say that it's a specific someone because, most women don't want the bum on the street corner to choose them. And no disrespect to any homeless people. I don't mean it like that. I just mean random person on the street corner. Like, most women don't want that person to choose them. So there's a specific person or specific people that we identify as the kind of person that would sufficiently validate me. And if I get this kind of person to choose me, that means I'm good enough. And that's part of the woundedness as well. So I'm going to speak into that too. But we identify some special person. And then we say, if I can get this special person to choose me, then I'll feel special too. And then I'll feel good enough. Then I'll feel worthy. Then I'll feel lovable. Then I'll feel whole. And when this is taken to a certain degree, when my identity, when my self-worth, when my self-esteem, my self-image is wrapped up in this, it's not just the need for belonging anymore. It's a distortion of that need. It's a wound. And then my very attempt to meet that need becomes self-destructive. And so for all the ladies listening today, I know that you're going to resonate with this a lot. Because, let's just look at Disney for a moment. Or let's look at Barbie for a moment. Let's look at the conditioning that young women receive. And every Disney princess, at least when I was growing up, I think Disney is more progressive these days. So, kudos to Disney for evolving the conversation. But, I think back to when I was growing up, every princess had a Prince Charming. And she was chosen by that Prince Charming. If we look at Barbie, Barbie had Ken, right? Which, if you've seen the Barbie movie now, Barbie's trying to evolve the conversation, and that's great, right? I loved the way that they equalized things in the Barbie movie. It was definitely an evolution of what Barbie was when I was growing up. But there's a certain conditioning where young girls, and who ultimately become women, are conditioned to believe that one day they will find a special partner. And when they find that special partner, that will be a completion of themselves. And I want to speak to all the independent women right now. Those of you out there who on some level recognize that you don't necessarily need a man, who have built your own life, who have made your own way in the world without that partner. I want to acknowledge that. It takes a lot of strength, takes a lot of courage. So amazing that you've done that. But even for my super independent, super capable, super brilliant, intelligent women out there who are doing it on your own, I want you to just take a moment and explore your heart, explore your soul. And if you're honest, and maybe I'm wrong about this, if I'm wrong, I'll admit it. But if you're honest, is there a part of you that feels like there's something wrong with you because you haven't been chosen? And yes, you've done so much, and maybe you've created a big career for yourself, and you bought a beautiful home for yourself and you make plenty of money and you have plenty of friends and you're probably a light in the world and deeply admired by so many people and you've done so much with your life. But in your quiet moments, when you're alone, when you're not performing or impressing or anything, do you notice that little ache, that little longing, that little doubt? Doubt is a good word for it. The part of you that says, what's wrong with me? Why haven't I been chosen? And maybe your sister's married or your best friend is married or people around you are being chosen and getting into relationships. And you say, why isn't it happening for me? What's wrong with me? And some of you have noticed how self-destructive that need became. And so you've shut it down altogether. And I want to speak to both sides of that today because some women are completely overtaken by that need. And it becomes highly self-destructive because they are literally subjecting themselves to abuse from men in attempts to get that need met. And then some women go the opposite direction. And they say, I'm not going to let any man take advantage of me. I'm not going to subject myself to that kind of abuse. I'm not going to be weak like that. And then they disconnect from that need. And it's still there, and it creeps into their life like self-doubt, like questioning, like a little hit to my self-esteem, like a little nagging, like I'm not quite good enough no matter how much approval I get, no matter how successful I am. It's still there. And some women vacillate between the two. I've noticed with many of the women I work with, highly intelligent, highly capable, highly powerful, run big businesses, do all kinds of amazing things in the world. And then in their relationships with men, when you pull back the curtain, they're sometimes pandering to a man who isn't worth half of what she is. There's a woman in one of my programs recently that I was working with, and she was sharing with us that, she's had really amazing, high-value men propose to her, want to marry her, be completely devoted to her. And she walked away from them. But then she finds herself in a relationship with some guy who they've been together 2 years. He doesn't want to move in with her. He's like still wanting to split things financially. And not that splitting things financially is always bad, but it was the energy of it that was a little off. Like he wasn't being a partner. And here she is dealing with this and trying to impress him and trying to get him to be the man that she needs. But men who already show up as the man that she needs, she can't receive that from them. And that's a great example of how this need gets distorted. And so I want to dive into that for a moment because this is the lie. And this is the biggest lie that I want to address in today's conversation. Is that the idea is that I need to be chosen, not like a basic human need, but like a distorted need, as we've been talking about. A need that is over, what's the word? Oh, all-consuming. A need that becomes so all-consuming that it actually becomes self-destructive. And so the need is I need to be chosen. And the lie is that if I find some special person to choose me, then I'll be worthy. Then I'll be good enough. Then I'll finally feel whole within myself. But let's peel back the curtain for a moment and let's look at what's really going on under the surface there, because this is where it gets really, really insidious. If I say, when I find the right person and when that person chooses me, I'll finally feel whole, I'll finally feel worthy, I'll finally feel good enough. And I just want to as a quick aside, say that you may not be personally narrating this to yourself. It's more like an emotional impression that lives in your body. So think about it like that. It's not something that you're going to consciously think to yourself. You may sometimes, but more often than that, it's going to be something you feel more than something you think. It's going to be like an ache or a weight that you carry in your body, not a story that you're mentally telling yourself. Often on the surface, you're telling yourself the story, I'm amazing, I'm awesome, I'm powerful, but then you feel these things. And the way you feel isn't really in alignment with the narrative that you're running in your mind. And that's where your truth gets revealed. Your truth gets revealed in the somatic impressions, what you feel in your body, not so much the ego narrative that you tell yourself in your mind. But going back to what I was saying, the weight that you're carrying, the ache that you're carrying is I'm not quite good enough until I'm chosen, until some special person out in the world decides that I'm good enough and then they choose me. That's the ache. That's the weight. That's the wound. And this is where it gets really, really insidious, because on the surface you would say, okay, well, it's not that complicated, right? If that's the wound, then all I need to do is find the right person, get them to choose me, and then I'll be healed. But the thing is, it doesn't work like that. That's the lie, because when you live in that wound, what happens is you're always chasing something that you can never actually find. And here's why. Here's why. The reason you can never actually find it is because the starting point, the origin point, the identity that lives in your body is, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I'm not lovable. There's something wrong with me. That's the present reality that you feel. That's the truth that is alive inside of you. Now, I want to say it's not the ultimate truth, but it's what feels like your truth. It's what you're carrying with you. And so if the origin point, the starting point is I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, there's something wrong with me, and there are many different ways to name that. So pick the one that resonates most for you, right? Some people say I'm not enough. Some people say I'm too much. Some people say I'm not good enough, or I'm not pretty enough, or I'm not powerful enough, or I'm not confident enough, or like there are many versions of that. So pick the one that resonates most for you, but it's founded in some sense of insufficiency. There's something about me that's just not quite sufficient. And what I want to say is that's a vibrational reality. When I talk about a vibrational reality, I mean, we live in a vibrational universe, right? This is, I mean, I know it's maybe a little fringe to talk about it like this. It hasn't become mainstream yet, but science would back this up. Like the quantum mechanics and the science that's currently being discovered is that everything's made of energy. If you break an atom down to its subatomic parts, you realize there's no solid matter inside of it. It's all energetic molecules and orchestrations that are held together through electromagnetic relationships. We live in an energetic universe. And energy attracts like energy. Energy bonds with like energy. And this happens, it's like as above, so below. So my starting point, my origin point, is going to seek a match that is the equivalent of that origin point. This is the problem. You see, if it was true that I could just find someone who's good enough and they could choose me and that would heal me, then it wouldn't be that hard. The problem is, if my origin point is I'm not sufficient in some way, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not attractive enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not strong enough, I'm not courageous enough, I'm too much, I'm too little, I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, there's something wrong with me. If the origin point is that, I'm going to seek its equivalent in a partner. right? Because it's a mystery. Like going back to this woman I was sharing about from my program, it's an absolute mystery until you understand it. But it seems like an absolute mystery. Here's this woman. She's beautiful. She's intelligent. She's capable. She's done so much in her life. She's overcome so much. Here's this incredible, stellar woman. The fuck is she doing with this guy? The fuck is she doing with a guy who won't even move in with her after 2 years? Why would she tolerate that? Because it doesn't matter how many external accomplishments that she's done. In fact, often the external accomplishments are what we do to try to cover up the feeling of insufficiency. It's like another version of being chosen. Let me get a big job. Let me make lots of money. Let me get approval from my colleagues and my friends and family. And let me make my body attractive and my face attractive. And right, let me achieve and collect accolades and attention and all of this. If I make it look really good on the outside, maybe the inside will finally match it. And unfortunately, it doesn't. And something I've often said, and this is a point worth making clearly here, specifically with women, I've noticed this, and this is actually true for men too, is that your relationship, so if you're, let me just put it this way, your romantic relationships, so if you're a woman interested in men or a man interested in women, or if you're gay or whatever, your romantic relationships will always reveal the truth of how you really feel about yourself. Because sometimes it won't show up in your work. Sometimes it won't show up with your family, or like we can get really, really good at making things pretty. We can make our bodies pretty. We can make our careers pretty. We can make our friendships and our family relationships. Like we can get really, really good at making things pretty. But our romantic relationships, the most intimate relationships of our lives, will always reveal how we truly feel about ourselves. And that's what's happening with this woman I've been speaking about, or what was happening. Even though she is incredible, and she's proved that she's incredible time and time and time again, to the point where multiple men have wanted to marry her, multiple high quality, high value men, she still chooses someone who's going to let her feel the way she really feels about herself. And in reality, it's also the way he feels about himself. They are an energetic, vibrational match. And no matter how good you are at making things pretty, you can't hide the truth in your intimate relationships. Just to give a contrasting example, another woman might find herself in a situation where maybe she marries a rich man and has kids and has the perfect family, and she's gotten really good at making things pretty. The perfect house and the perfect cul-de-sac with the perfect smiling family and the perfect guy with the big job, and he takes care of her and all of this. But when you pull back the curtain, you look behind the scenes, there's no love, there's no warmth, there's no intimacy. Even though she got really, really good at making things pretty, the truth of the relationship is always going to reflect how she truly feels about herself. And that's actually a really good example of maybe she thought, if I find the rich man, the high quality man, the provider, and he chooses me, I'll feel like I'm enough. And she finds the man who has those surface qualities, and she thinks this is the kind of man that will make me feel like I'm enough. But if he has the surface qualities and not the emotional qualities, if he puts a roof over the head, but doesn't know how to tend to her heart, she's still going to be feeling insufficient. And this is something I've seen with a lot of my clients, is they've chosen people like this thinking that if I get the perfect life on the outside, it'll change what I feel on the inside. And again, this is where the need becomes self-destructive. Sometimes it shows up as chasing someone unavailable. Sometimes it shows up as finding the perfect person on paper, but they can't really meet you where you need to be met. Sometimes it shows up like walking away from the guy who feels like home and could really love you, and choosing the guy who can't. Sometimes it shows up as an attraction to those who make you chase and strive and work for it, but feeling empty with those who really truly would be devoted. Because all of this gets wired into our nervous system. And so our nervous system is seeking comfort. Our nervous system is seeking familiarity. And so when we find ourselves reliving patterns in our relationships, what we're reliving are patterns of comfort that our nervous system feels okay with. And so let's talk about the origin point of the wound. Because if you have this wound, if you've been conditioned in this way, then you're probably going to relate to the origin point. And the origin point is typically a sense of inconsistent love in childhood. And sometimes when I say inconsistent love, that could mean a lot of things, but sometimes it can be highly abusive. Maybe there was warmth and tenderness, but you were also molested. And I know that's a tough example to jump right into, but I want to name it for anyone who's been there. And that could be very confusing for a child because it feels warm, it feels tender, it feels loving, but at the same time, it's self-interested. That person is abusing their power to take advantage of it for self-interest. And so the impression is like, I can't really trust warmth. I can't really trust somebody who's being loving with me. Because what seems like love isn't always love. Or maybe it's a sense of you had parents who really cared about you and did their best, but they were busy, they were working, they were hustling, they were trying to keep a roof over the head and food on the table, and they just didn't have the time. And so maybe they were really good parents and they really loved you, but they were just never available for you. Or maybe you had a single parent, maybe one of your parents walked out. Maybe you were raised by a single mother and you grew up without a father, and you always carried this sense of abandonment that the man who brought me into this world doesn't want me. And then that can show up. What happens in our psyche in a situation like that is we're literally not chosen by our father. We're not chosen by the man who brought us into the world. And so what often happens is that gets projected and we say, well, if I can get another man to choose me, that will resolve that. It'll make up for the fact that I wasn't chosen when I was younger. Which again, sounds good in theory. The problem is that you're always going to seek the vibrational equivalent of the abandonment that you identify with. Or maybe you had parents who were preoccupied with their own lives. If that was addiction, if that was their own relational wounds, maybe you had a parent who was always chasing love. something I feel really deeply for my little sisters, because God bless them, they had no choice in this. And I was a little bit older, and my oldest sister is 7 years younger than me. And then I have younger sisters who are like 7 years younger than her, basically. So my sisters, I was a little bit older and I was kind of living my own life, but my sisters really took the brunt of it because my mom went through several marriages that were very abusive. And there's been sexual misconduct, and there's been like neglect, alcoholism. And this is maybe my mother's wound of needing to be chosen. And bringing these men into her life, into the lives of my sisters, me to a degree, but less so. And then my sisters have had to live with these men and have been subjected to the abuse and the neglect that have taken place as a result of it. And so our parents' wounding, our parents' need to be chosen, can indirectly subject us to the same wound. And this is what's called generational trauma, where our parents' wounding is passed down to us. And I'm just naming some of the first examples that come to mind. There are probably more, but I want you to get a sense of the origin point of this. The inconsistency and unavailability of love, or maybe the love was there, but I couldn't quite trust it, or it was there for a moment and then it was taken away. Or I never really felt safe in my own skin because I always had to protect myself a little bit. And then this is the impression that we're brought up in. And this impression starts to live in our bodies. That's why I said earlier, it's not necessarily like a conscious storyline. Sometimes it is. Especially when you're triggered or activated, it might become more conscious than other times. But a lot of times on the surface, we're trying to tell ourselves we're good enough. A lot of times on the surface, this is the funny thing about affirmations. And, I honestly think most of the time affirmations suck. And no offense, if you do affirmations and it works for you, keep doing it. But this is the thing about affirmations. If you look in the mirror and you tell yourself, I'm good enough, I'm lovable, I'm worthy, I'm strong, I'm powerful. Well, why are you doing that? If you really felt like you were good enough and worthy and strong and powerful, would you be standing in the mirror saying it to yourself? Maybe. And if you are, then awesome. You're affirming what you're holding in your body as a truth, and that's powerful. But most of the time when we're doing an affirmation, we're trying to overcompensate for a feeling or a sense that we're holding in our body that is the opposite of that affirmation. So if I'm telling myself I'm good enough, what's underneath that is the feeling that I'm not good enough. And every time I look in the mirror and tell myself that, what I'm actually doing is unconsciously reminding myself that I don't feel good enough. That's why affirmations most of the time kind of suck. I remember this meme I saw. I thought it was hilarious. There was a plaque, like a little wall hanging, like kind of thing you'd get at Home Goods or something. And it was like a little wall hanging. And it just said, I am enough, 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 like 10 times in a row. It was something somebody would hang on the wall. And the meme had a picture of this wall hanging. And then it said, for $7.99, you can let everyone who comes in your house know that you're struggling. I just thought it was hilarious because it's true, right? Like, why would someone hang that on their wall? They must not feel like they're good enough. If they felt like they were good enough, they wouldn't need that. They would just be it. And the reason I'm naming all of this is because a lot of times the conscious story that we tell ourselves, the conscious story that we live in, is us trying to convince ourselves that the felt impression in our body isn't true. I'm just going to say this. The felt impression in the body will always be more true than the surface level storyline. And so if you were raised in any number of these environments, That's the felt impression that you've internalized. And because you've internalized that felt impression, left unchecked, left unresolved, you are going to seek relationships that match energetically, vibrationally that impression. So I don't mean to pick on this woman. She's lovely. I would never say anything negative about her, but I'm just using it as an example. The one I talked about earlier. Highly capable, highly intelligent, beautiful, strong, all of it. But she's carrying a felt impression that comes from the trauma, that comes from what she inherited in her childhood. And she's choosing a man who matches that felt impression energetically, vibrationally. Underneath it all, underneath the performance and the posturing, underneath all of it, they both feel the same way about themselves. And now they've created a relationship in which using each other as the reflection reinforces the way they feel about themselves. And maybe he's chosen a woman that on some level he knows he's not good enough for, and every day he can look at her as his reflection, and she can be a constant mirror for him that makes him feel insufficient. And she's chosen a man that, in all honesty, she knows she deserved better. She admitted that to us. And every day she can look at him and he can remind her that she doesn't really feel she's worthy of what she truly deserves. And the two of them are locked in this dynamic, or at least were, locked in this dynamic of continuing to mirror to each other the truth of how they feel about themselves. It's painful. Now, what do we do about this? What do we do about this? I bring to mind another woman that I was recently working with, and, kind of classic example of struggling with this wound. And she'd been married a couple times and not happy marriages. And one of those kinds of situations, a lot of you may relate to this, where you meet someone and whatever the reason you're attracted, you think they're the cat's meow, or you think they're everything you're looking for, and you partner with them. And as the newness starts to fade off and you start to really see them, it turns out they're maybe toxic or abusive or hurtful in different ways. And rather than saying, I don't deserve to be subjected to this kind of treatment, you try to fix it. You try to make it better. You think, if I do more, if I do better, I can make them love me the way I need to be loved. And it's that need to be chosen, but again, it's a distorted version of it, right? It's not like, yes, as I said earlier, we all have a need for belonging. Like, I belong to my wife, she belongs to me, not like property, but like in a relationship. And we have a healthy, stable sense of belonging where we have a home and we belong in this home and we feel safe and secure in that. That's healthy, that's normal. But when that need gets distorted, now she partners with somebody who's abusive to her, and she tries to earn that belonging. She says, if I do better, if I try harder, if I can be more, if I can be better, if I can be different, if I can be more of what he wants, someday he'll choose me, someday he'll love me the way I need to be chosen. And she did this a couple of times in a couple of different marriages with different men. And when I met her, she had been quite beaten down after a lot of years. Her self-esteem was pretty crushed. And again, like I want to say, brilliant, intelligent, beautiful, wonderful woman. Nothing wrong with her. Nothing wrong with her other than the fact that she had spent years subjecting herself to something that broke her self-esteem, that caused her to severely doubt herself. And so we're on a coaching session and we're discussing this situation, and she tells me that I've never left a man before. I've always stayed until they left me. And with both of these marriages, she tried and tried and tried and tried and tried until the point where eventually they just used her until they were done. And then she said, I'm hoping that my next one is the one, and I'll never have to leave a man. That the next man I meet is going to be the one. They're going to choose me. They're going to love me. They're going to be good to me, and I won't ever have to leave a man. And this is what I said to her. First thing I said is, I hope that happens for you too. So, I want for her what she wants for herself. It's what I want for all of my clients. I said, I hope that happens for you too. But this is the reality. And I'm going to, for all of you listening, I'm going to drop some tough reality right now. I'm going to do it with love, but I'm going to drop some tough reality. I said to her, you have awareness of the wound. You have awareness of the pattern. That's beautiful. That's an essential first step, is to have awareness of the pattern, awareness of the wound. You have that. That's beautiful. The problem is the impression is still living in your body. And how do I know that? Because of what you're saying right now. You're still just hoping that someone will choose you, and you'll never have to rise to the occasion. But this is the thing. Rising to that occasion is what breaks the pattern. This is what I think so many of us miss, is we have these pitfalls and these failures and these breakdowns, and we get hurt, and we just hope that it will be better next time, without realizing that if we are still living with the same felt impression, we're going to create the same results. And so this is what I said to her. I said, I'm going to be very honest with you, and I'm going to do this with love. The next person you meet will probably not be the one. And I gave the caveat, miracles happen, maybe it will happen. I hope it does. But here's the thing. If you're still living with that felt impression in your body, if you're still carrying that wound, you're still carrying that ache, what is going to happen is you're going to be attracted to and attract into your life someone who is the match for that, someone who is the equivalent for that. And that's not a bad thing. I know you say, what? How is that not a bad thing? This is why it's not a bad thing, because every time you recreate the pattern is your opportunity to break it. Some of you may have heard the old saying, and I think this is God truth right here. This is like one of the truest things I've ever heard, is that life will continue to repeat the lesson until you learn it. Sure, you can believe you live in a universe that has no order, that has no structure, and that everything just happens randomly, and some people get lucky and some people don't. You can believe that if you want to, but it's super disempowering. Because if you're not one of the quote lucky ones, then you're just fucked. And even if you look at how molecules bond together through electromagnetic relationships and how our entire universe is built on energetic equality, that doesn't really add up. If you believe in God, then God is the order. And no matter what your religion is, it doesn't matter what your religion is, but God is the order. God is the structure. God is the organizing principle. And we are created in the image and likeness of God. Which means within our small domain, which is smaller than God's domain is everything. But in our small domain, we are the organizing principle. We organize the world around us to match what we believe about ourselves. And I don't think there's a single religion in the world that would argue with that. I think all religions at their core teach that on some level. And I'm generally non-religious. I'm mostly just spiritual. I don't subscribe to any particular religion. But I've studied a lot of them, and I've found that they all share these common themes. I don't mean to make this a religious conversation, but my point is that life is not random. Life has order. Life has structure. And we continue to attract into our lives the things that are reflective of how we truly feel about ourselves, because every time we do that, it's an opportunity to level up our identity. It's an opportunity to level up the reality that we carry in our bodies. And so she attracts that man into her life. Maybe he's similar than the past. Maybe not the same, because maybe she has done some work. Maybe she has evolved and shifted on some levels, right? So maybe he's not the same. Maybe he's a little better, but still not exactly what she needs. Still not the man she needs in her life. And now she's at another fork in the road, another choice point. And the option that is laid before her is, do I do what I've always done and try to be good enough and more, better, different, and everything I can think of to get this man to love me the way I need to be loved? And further solidify that ache, that impression that I carry in my body? Or do I make a new choice? Do I say, you know what, I'm more clear about what I'm looking for in a partner. I'm more clear about the kind of man that I need in my life. And it's not that I hate you. It's not that you're a bad person. It's not that you're a toxic narcissist, whatever. It's just that I'm more clear about what I need. And I can feel and I can sense, and as I've gotten to know you, I recognize this is not it. And she chooses to end it. And when she does that, a little miracle happens. Because all of a sudden, she's no longer the woman that she's been her whole life up until that point. She is actually a different person now. She's the person who leaves a relationship that doesn't suit her, rather than the person who stays and tries to bend over backwards to make it work. And I truly believe that there's not really any other way to heal. And we talk a lot about, like in my program, I teach things like inner child healing. I teach things like breath work. I teach things like somatic experiencing. And I work a lot with the body, and I work a lot with the felt impressions that we're carrying. We do a lot of work around shame, which all the ideas that I mentioned today of insufficiency and not good enough and not pretty enough and not smart enough, and any form of insufficiency is really shame. And so in my program, we work with all of this, but I want to express a certain nuance here. The reason we work with all of this is not because those things in and of themselves heal you. It's because those are the things that support you in the moment that it's time when the rubber meets the road. When it's time to do the thing that you need to do, those are the things that help you. Because here's what's going to happen for her. When it comes time for her to leave that relationship, her body is going to have an intense reaction to it. She's probably going to have intense anxiety. She's going to be filled with fear. All of the abandonment stuff from her past and this distorted need to be chosen, it's all going to be right there in her face. She's going to physically panic. Maybe she has a panic attack. That happens sometimes. Maybe she feels like she can't breathe. Maybe she cries inconsolably. Now, I'm not saying this happens for everyone, but I'm saying these are the kinds of responses that the body has. The self-regulation tools, the breath work, the inner child practices, like these tools are what we go to in the moment when we need to do the thing that we know we need to do and we're terrified to do it. We don't do breath work because breath work heals us. We do breath work because breath work helps us gain a sense of power in the moment that it's time to heal. Because this is what I want to say. You might have been on all the meditation retreats. You might have done all the breath work. You might do all the somatic practicing and the ecstatic dance. And you might do all of this. And it's beautiful, right? Like I'm not knocking it. I do it myself. Like all of these practices are beautiful practices. But you might do all of this stuff. But if you can't walk away from a relationship that's wounding you or not serving you or not in alignment with your highest truth, you're not healed. I say that with a lot of love. You are still operating from the wounded pattern that you've always operated from. And the moment that your healing opportunity arrives, the moment where, just working with this example, it's time to walk away from a relationship. When that moment arrives, your body is going to try to remain, it's going to try to keep you who you've always been. Because as I said earlier, the nervous system is seeking comfort. The nervous system is seeking familiarity. This is the irony, and it's crazy, right? But the irony is that often it feels safer to remain in a relationship and continue subjecting ourselves to abuse from someone than to leave that relationship and be on our own, because the distorted need tells me that if this person is choosing me, I'm good enough even if they're abusing me. And to walk away and not have them choosing me anymore feels worse than being on the receiving end of their abuse. And so I want to make this really, really practical for everybody right now. I just want to boil this down. In whatever the way this wound is showing up for you, I've given a lot of examples today. In whatever way this wound is showing up for you, here's your practice. You identify the pattern and you break it. You do the hard thing. And I say this with love, but I don't care what your philosophy is. I don't care how many books you've read. I don't care how many ceremonies you've done. I don't care about any of that, because if you can't do the hard thing in the moment you need to, the wounded pattern is still driving you. At the end of the day, that's the only thing that matters. And everything else are things that support you in being prepared and having the tools and the resources to do the hard thing in the moment that you need to do it. And this is the miracle. When you do it, everything changes. Because you are no longer the person who operates from that pattern anymore. In an instant, you become a completely new person. Similar situation. Someone came to my coaching circle the other night telling us that she left somebody. And similar situation, different person, but similar situation. She said, I've never done this before. It's like, it was a literal miracle. She was a completely different woman. Because she left a guy who wanted to be with her for the first time because she identified that he's not the kind of guy she wanted to be with. She said, I never would have done that before. So this is the practice. This is the practice. And something I want to say before we close out today's episode is that if you're trying to do this alone, it's going to be really hard. And this is what my Inspired Love program is for. I've touched on today a little bit about the practices, the things we teach, the somatic work, the breath work, these different tools and resources that we teach you throughout the journey, so that you have them in your toolbox and that you know what to do when your body wants to keep you in your old version of yourself. When your nervous system is screaming for comfort, you need these tools and you need these practices to nurture yourself through that, because if you don't have them, you won't be able to do it. And you will revert back to comfort. You will revert back to what feels like safety. But then you also have the support of an incredible community around you. So weekly you're showing up and you're hearing the stories of people who are going through these same things and having their breakthroughs. You have my hands-on loving support every week where we sit down, we talk about what's real for you, where you're at, your story, what you're confronting. I help you navigate it personally, hands-on with you. And that's what we do. And you can join for an 8-week membership. And then if you want, you can extend that to a 6-month membership. But the purpose is so whatever you're trying to heal, whatever you're trying to transform, whatever you're trying to call in, like, let me put it very simply like this. If you're trying to call in the partner of your dreams, the man of your dreams, the most important thing is not which dating app you're on. The most important thing is not where you go and what you do. Like those are all secondary. They're not unimportant. It's important to have strategies to meet people, and we work on some of that too. But the most important thing is to have a nervous system that can hold that relationship. Going back to the woman I shared about earlier. Lots of high quality men wanted to marry her, wanted to propose to her. She broke off multiple engagements. It's not that the men weren't there. It's that she didn't have a nervous system that could hold being loved like that. She had to run from it. And she ran from that to a relationship that made her feel safe, even if it made her feel undervalued. The most important thing is that you develop the nervous system capacity to hold the love that you want. And what I've done in the Inspired Love program is in a single place, I've created the set of tools you need to do that. I've created the structure, the guidance, and the community to support you every step of the way. And so if you resonate with that message right now, I want to invite you. On September 2nd, we are beginning our next initiation, we'll call it. It's going to be a new group that we're going to be going through this journey together. And if you know that you're tired of being on this journey alone, if you know that you're tired of figuring this out by yourself, and you'd like my hands-on support, my guidance, support of my team, the support of the community, the curriculum that offers the tools and the resources so that you're fully equipped when the moment comes to do the hard thing. That's what we offer. And we're here for you every step of the way. So I'm going to leave the link if you'd like to book a call with one of my team members. It's not a sales call. It's just an information call. It's an opportunity to get on, share a little bit about where you are, what you're looking for. You're going to meet with a graduate of the program. So she's not a professional salesperson. She's someone who's been through the program and had her own results in her life. And she's going to tell you about what the program did for her. She's going to answer any questions you have, hear your story. She'll be honest with you. If she thinks it'll support her. If it won't. But if you're ready to take that next step, if this has been calling you, and you know this is the support you need to take the next step, I want to be here for you. And I've spent years developing and refining this program so that it is here when you're ready. So again, I'll leave the link in the show notes below wherever you're listening to this. Main thing I want you to take away from this is that your nervous system is always going to seek to keep you the person you've always been. And that's not wrong. It's not bad. It's just what the system was designed to do. But you have the power to transform. You have the power to develop the nervous system that can hold the love, the life of your wildest imagination. And in fact, my program is about so much more than just love, relationship. It is about that. But it's really about being the highest expression of yourself and having the love that you create, the partner that you attract, be someone who matches that version of you. That's what I want for you. I don't want you to just find a relationship. I want you to live the most expressed, inspired version of you. And then have the relationship that comes into your life match that. That's what I want for you. So thank you for being with me today. As always, it's a pleasure to show up and just take an hour and share a message with you. I hope that it resonated. I hope that it touched you. If there's anything I can do to support, I would love to get to know you better and see how that can work. Aside from that, love and blessings. Thank you for being here with me today. I'll be back next week. Take care. See you then. Bye. Thanks again for checking out the show. Please subscribe on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on the most. And I would love it so much if you leave a review and tell people what you think of us. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram @TheLivingRelationship to connect more closely. And I'm grateful to be supporting you on your journey to love.